When you picked up your very first camera, you were probably filled with enthusiasm at the endless possibilities ahead of you. All the stories you'll tell, the trips you'll document, the creative people you'll meet. You dive right into it, learning, experimenting, doing anything possible to produce work you're proud of. But there's a hidden cost to your camera that shows up much later. Data. Project after project, it piles up. You put off organizing your work and you keep buying external SSDs and hard drives to keep up with the terabytes you shoot each year. Soon you're staring at a digital mess. Nothing's labeled, drives are full, and your stress goes up every time you need to find anything. If that sounds familiar, you're not alone. Most creators never really think about data management until they lose something that matters. That's what today's video, sponsored by Ugreen, is about. I'm going to cover why and how you should solve this problem so you can set up a proper solution once and spend the rest of your time focusing on what actually matters, creating. By the end of this video, you'll learn why external drives and cloud storage aren't ideal solutions, why you should build your own cloud, saving you time, money, and stress, the best practices to back up and protect your work for life. Let's get started. Buying external drives when you're just starting out feels like it makes sense. They're portable, SSDs are fast to work off of, and they feel like an easy, simple solution. But once you've got half a dozen of them, you start to run into issues. Your data is scattered. Even if your folder structure is great, you can't access all your data at once. Drives go missing, they fail, and worst of all, they train you into bad habits around backup and storage. Now, companies like Google and Apple would love to convince you the answer is paying them every month to store your files for you. We'll get into why I don't recommend that in a second, but to set some context, let me show you the setup I'm using for this video. This is the Ugreen DXP 4800 Plus. It's a 4-bay NAS that supports up to 112 terabytes of storage, with up to 16 of those terabytes coming from 2 available M.2 SSD slots. So you can dedicate fast storage to projects you're actively working on. Let's do a quick physical tour. The rear of the unit has an HDMI port, a USB 3.2 Type-A, 2 USB 2.0 ports, 2.5 and 10 gigabit Ethernet ports. On the front, we have an SD card slot for ingesting directly onto the NAS, a Type-C port, and another USB 3.2 Type-A. With the 10 gigabit Ethernet port, you should be able to get up to 1250 megabytes per second of throughput, which means you could theoretically transfer 1 terabyte of files in about 20 minutes. Of course, you'll need a 10 gigabit network setup to hit those speeds, but even on standard gigabit networks, you'll see significant performance improvements over cloud storage. The build of this NAS we're doing today is 4 14 terabyte drives in RAID 5. Now, it's beyond the scope of this video to deeply explain how each type of RAID works and which to choose. However, for the sake of this video, all you really need to understand is that when I put these 4 drives into RAID 5, this allows me up to 1 drive failure at any given time without me losing any data. This does come at the cost of less overall capacity, but think of it as built-in insurance on your data. All drives will eventually fail and need to be replaced at some point in their lifetime. And if you're thinking these high-capacity drives seem expensive upfront, let's run the numbers. Here's a table with a cost breakdown of the major providers of cloud storage over a 5-year period, which is probably the earliest you would need to replace a single hard drive in a NAS on average. Each provider varies in what they offer as a max single user plan. However, the cost difference is huge, especially when you factor in how much more potential storage you can have in a NAS. Google being the most expensive provider at nearly $15,000 USD over a 5-year period for just 30 terabytes. Hello, editing Brandon here. One thing I wanted to clarify with that last line is the $15,000 plan is actually the 30 terabyte Google AI plan, which comes with a bunch of AI features. Not really as logical comparison as the Google Premium plan, which is $9,000 over 5 years. So wanted to point out that that's the more logical comparison to the NAS. Overall, it's still a lot more expensive, but wanted to make that clear. Okay, back to the video. Compare that to the 56 terabytes of raw storage that we have from this 4-bay NAS build, and it's not even close. If you plan on keeping your data for the rest of your life, paying for cloud storage doesn't make a ton of sense. If we then looked at the cost of half a dozen external hard drives and SSDs, instead of buying those over time, you could have invested into a NAS setup and just had a single external SSD for active projects on the go. Now let's look at some real world scenarios this is useful for. For starters, once you have all your files in one centralized location, not only is it much easier to organize everything, you can now access them from anywhere, on any device, at any time. There's a bunch of ways that you can do this, but the simplest way is to enable Ugreen Link and sign in through a web browser or the app on your device of choice. Let's look at some practical use cases. I'm currently testing the Leica Q343 for an upcoming video. After shooting some photos, I offloaded the SD card and uploaded the files straight to my NAS back home for backup. If you were traveling and wanted a secure, immediate copy of your photos, this gives you a way to do it from anywhere. It also has raw image support, which is super useful for viewing your work remotely. One important thing to keep in mind when using Ugreen Link is to make sure you are doing so on a secure network. I don't recommend accessing your NAS over public Wi-Fi unprotected. You will also want to enable two-factor authentication for an extra layer of security. Where you really start to see an advantage in workflow with a local NAS is once you have completed work on a particular photo or video project, you will probably need to back up your project to make space on your working drive. Instead of uploading it to Google Drive or iCloud and having it take forever, you can just back it up over your local network at much faster speeds. When I tested this with an 11 gig folder of photos and videos, the transfer to my NAS took 2.2 minutes locally versus 9 minutes to upload to Google Drive, which depending on the total size of data you're transferring, the extra speed would add up quickly. This also works great if you are collaborating on a project with someone else, say an editor. You could set them up with their own share or drop them a folder link, upload the footage you want them to work on, and then they can access and download it as needed. Multiple people can be working with the files at the same time, which really speeds up the workflow overall. Now, maybe the most underrated benefit of a NAS, automated backups of all your personal and family devices. My wife takes a lot of photos of our kids usually while I'm at work, and this system makes sure all of them are safely backed up automatically on a regular schedule. I can scroll through them anytime from my phone or PC, and she never has to lift a finger or think about uploading anything manually. Ugreen also has an AI assistant in this Photos app that helps with organization and gives you the ability to search through photos based on specific words or people, which should make searching through thousands of photos throughout your life just a little bit easier. If you're someone who does client work, another problem you'll probably face, what to do with your client's data once your job is done. If you don't want to store it for them, you can create a private folder for them, create a link with a custom pin for security, then just send it over for them to download anywhere in the world. The best part is there is no limit to how large a project can be so long as it fits on your NAS. Once they have downloaded it, you can delete the media on your end. Doing this would save you a ton of space over your career, which saves you money, as well as saves you valuable time and hassle, not shipping hard drives or relying on services like WeTransfer to get your media to them. As much of a quality of life upgrade as a NAS is, it's not bulletproof. There are a few key things to keep in mind if you actually want to protect your work long term. As I mentioned earlier, I have this build configured in a RAID 5, which allows for one drive failure, but a RAID is not a backup and doesn't protect my data in case of a disaster like my house burning down. So ideally you follow the 3-2-1 rule. This is a guideline that states you should have 3 copies of your data, your original plus 2 backups, on 2 different storage types, let's say an external drive and a NAS or a NAS and cold cloud storage, with 1 copy of your data being offsite somewhere else from the others. In my instance, I have a second Ugreen DXP 4800 Plus configured with another 4 14TB drives stored at my parents' house. Now, I actually have more data overall than can be stored offsite on this NAS, so I mainly use it as an offsite backup for my most critical data that I cannot bear to lose. Even if you didn't want to invest in a second NAS for an offsite backup, I still at least recommend you buy a large hard drive, upload all of your most important data to it, and store it somewhere safe. Protecting your life's work is very likely worth the effort and investment associated with setting this up. A NAS just unlocks remote access, is more scalable long-term, and allows you to do automated backups on whatever schedule you want. Doing this yourself is also still much cheaper than paying for cloud storage as offsite backup, but cloud storage is still an option you can do if you don't want to do this yourself. If you go this route, I suggest researching cold cloud storage for a slightly more affordable option for offsite backup. We covered a lot of ground in this video, but I hope if you made it this far, you have the foundation of what to do to make sure all of the work you create stays safe for your entire career and beyond. Setting up a NAS early in my career was probably a better investment than any camera I have ever bought. It has saved me so much time and stress that it's easily paid for itself on that alone. I truly appreciate your time today. If you found this helpful and you want to do this for yourself, you can check out the Ugreen DXP 4800 Plus at the link in the video description. Thank you so much for watching.